I'm Kristen Achkate. Welcome to APTN National News. We begin with some sad news. The Honourable Justice Murray Sinclair has died at the age of just 73. He was in a Winnipeg hospital with his family by his side. TR Wheatley joins us live now from outside the Manitoba Legislature. TR, can you tell us what's going on at the Ledge?
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. Behind me here, they have already put up the sacred teepee. In the coming hours, they will have the sacred fire here. Of course, it's to honor the life of the Honourable Justice Murray Sinclair as the, as the guy he was, but also, honoring him in his spiritual journey. That's what you do with a fire, rather. And so, he was also known as Mijane Gijik. That was his spirit name, and it's the one who speaks of pictures in the sky. So basically, what we know is that Sinclair had passed away early this morning at the St. Boniface Hospital. His family was by his side. Just a couple weeks ago, his family made a post about his health on Facebook, which went viral. So, there was some news that this may be coming, but it's still shocking.
TR, Mr. Sinclair has quite the legacy. Can you share a bit about some of the work he's done?
Yeah, that's right, Kristen. His career spans for nearly half a century. He was most known for his work with the Truth and Reconciliation. He led that, but it really started back in 1979 when he became a lawyer. From then, in 1988, he became the first Indigenous lawyer here in Manitoba. That same year, he also led the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry. That came at a time in history when tension was high between, Manitobans and Indigenous people. And in 2001, he also became a judge for the Court of Queen's Bench.
And over the years, TR, he's got recognition for his work. What do some of those accolades look like?
Yes, Kristen, he had so many. He had 14 honorary He had 14 honorary Doctor of Law degrees from many Canadian universities. He won the Inspire Award twice, first in '94 for his law career, and then later on for his life career. He's won the Order of Canada, he's won the Order of Manitoba, and many more that we will talk about later in the evening news.
We'll have to leave it there. TR, thank you so much for taking the time and giving us this update today.
Thanks, Kristen.
Justice Murray Sinclair was most known for leading the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. NTR will have more on Sinclair's passing tonight on our evening newscast. Last week, the law firm Sinclair was last working for changed its name to Cochrane Sinclair in his honor. Here's the firm's co-manager, Harold Sonny Cochrane, from the interview we had about the name change.
Murray's career as a lawyer, as a judge, as a senator is unprecedented. So our rebranding is about honoring Murray's lifelong work, and that's what we decided to do, to honor that work. His contributions to the Indigenous community and really to Canadian society at large is unmatched. So we thought it would be appropriate to honor him, and we're grateful that he was agreeable to us using his name.
Over in Ontario, the Anishinaabe-Aski Police Service has fired its chief of police. Late on Friday afternoon, the NAP's board of directors announced Roland Morrison was terminated effective immediately. Back in March, the NAP's board of directors suspended Chief Roland Morrison with pay pending the outcome of a misconduct investigation. Morrison is from the Chapleau Cree Nation east of Wawa, Ontario. He's served with NAP since 1997. Morrison had been the forces chief since 2019. Terry Armstrong has been appointed to the role of chief now. He previously served as the NAP's chief of police from 2013 to 2018. NAPS has 230 officers on 34 First Nations in Northern Ontario. Winnipeg police have arrested and charged a man with second-degree murder following a sudden death in downtown Winnipeg. On Thursday, October 31st at around 3:10 p.m., Winnipeg police were called to a street behind Portage Place Mall for a report of suspicious circumstances. When police arrived, they found an unresponsive woman with life-threatening injuries. She was taken to hospital in critical condition where she later died from her injuries. Police identified the victim as 28-year-old Brianna Close from Winnipeg. On Sunday, officers arrested 32-year-old John Kennedy and charged him with second-degree murder. Police say both the victim and the accused were known to each other. After more than 3 days, the hamlet of Kimmirut in Nunavut has power again. A state of emergency was declared after the power went out for more than 400 people. The outage started last Thursday afternoon and lasted until Sunday. The worry was that without power, many of the people's food in their fridges would go bad. On Monday, government buildings, offices, and the local school remained closed while crews continue to make repairs. Kulik Energy Corporation said the reason for the outage was due to issues with its generators. A Mi'kmaq mother may lose support under Jordan's principle to care for her 3 children, as the Ottawa and Nova Scotia governments disagree over who should deliver the services. Angel Moore reports.
Mary Isaac is a single mother of 3. She has had cerebral palsy all of her life and requires a wheelchair. Isaac mostly lived independently until she was hit by a car 2 years ago.
Yeah, so it's been like a rough go, because from the hospital, like, the only reason why I applied for this service to even be in my house in the first place was I wanted to ensure that my children's needs were not interrupted.
Isaac's 3 children, ages 4, 10, and 11 years old, require special needs services. Since Isaac's accident, they need 24-hour in-home support and services that are paid for under Jordan's principle. But the support from Indigenous Services Canada is short-term and ended yesterday. Isaac is afraid her children will end up in care if she can't find resources elsewhere.
But Jordan's principle, bottom line, has been more focused on a reduction plan and an alternative plan that doesn't exist. And they leave it up to you to find that resource.
Cindy Blackstock is the Executive Director of First Nations Child and Family Caring Society of Canada. She says Isaac's case includes all the concerns raised at the Human Rights Tribunal last September.
Part of the tribunal has said that, look, if you are going to say no to an urgent case, and this is an urgent case, then you have to come up with Plan B. You, the department, have to come up with a Plan B.
Isaac's lawyer, David Taylor, told APTN News Indigenous Services Canada will be extending Jordan's principal support for 3 weeks, while Isaac appeals her case in federal court and requests long-term care.
Have we not learned anything from everything we've seen come out from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 2015 through the $23.3 billion child welfare class action settlement in 2023? First Nations kids belong with their parents. These kids have a very loving mother who cares and works very hard for them, and she needs some help, and she should have it. That's why she's going to court.
Taylor hopes the federal court will agree Isaac needs long-term care.
I currently only have access to the service that's in my house through Jordan's principle, and they still want to cut it off and call CPS. That's not like a Truth and Reconciliation work. That's very colonial, actually, in the structure. It's a very colonial way of thinking.
Isaac hopes to hear soon if the decision to end her support is overturned. Meanwhile, APTN News asked Indigenous Services why Isaac's services are ending. A spokesperson replied in an email that they cannot comment out of respect for privacy for the children. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Reproductive, also known as Halifax.
A newly formed organization for Indigenous reproductive justice launched a national registry for survivors on Friday. The Survivors Circle for Reproductive Justice aims to help Indigenous victims of forced or coerced sterilization. The nonprofit corporation was formed in October. According to a Survivors Circle press release, the registry will help raise awareness, inform research on prevention measures, and bring survivors together for healing and wellness. We're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, LinkedIn, and X. And you can watch this newscast anywhere, anytime on YouTube. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Indigenous people from across the world recently traveled to Geneva, Switzerland to talk about resource extraction in their traditional lands. That story when we come back in about 3 minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're now just one sleep away from Americans electing their new president. And it was a busy weekend for both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, calling on supporters to head to the polls.
Country is a crooked country, okay? It's a crooked country, and we're going to make it straight. We're going to make it straight, and it's not an easy thing to do.
I see a nation determined to turn the page on hatred and division.
New voter polling shows Harris is leading Trump 47% to 44% in Iowa, a state Trump won by nearly 10 points in the last two elections. Harris was in Michigan yesterday making her closing pitch for the U.S. presidency at a historically black church and to Middle Eastern Americans in the battleground state. Trump made stops in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. In his remarks, Trump said he regrets leaving the White House in 2021. Americans head to the polls tomorrow. Groups of Indigenous peoples from across the world gathered in Geneva, Switzerland earlier this month to share their experiences with resource extraction projects in their traditional lands. They say projects under the banner of green or clean energy continue to disregard the rights of Indigenous people. Reporter Sav Jones spoke to one of the attendees.
Resource extraction projects aimed at reducing a society's carbon footprint are in some ways not necessarily better than their non-renewable counterparts. That's partly because many corporations leading these projects do so on the homelands of Indigenous peoples without meaningfully consulting with them first.
I think that's the big distinction. You know, if business is being done, you know, as usual and status quo, the way that it's always done, then, you know, what is the difference?
Lisa Raven is a land guardian who attended an Indigenous-led summit in Geneva, Switzerland this October about the issue. 95 Indigenous peoples representing communities from across the globe attended to share their perspectives and lived experiences. Raven went as a member of Camp Morningstar, a land defender group located next to Lake Winnipeg in Manitoba, and as part of the Coalition for Securing Indigenous Peoples' Rights in the Green Economy, or SURGE. She says transitioning to a green economy, one that hopes to mitigate climate change by investing in renewable energy projects, may sound nice, but just because the end product may be renewable doesn't mean the process to get it is always environmentally friendly.
The word, you know, that got coined and I heard a lot over there was green colonization. And so, you know, greenwashing, all of these projects, you know, for sake of the environment. But meanwhile, you know, it's harmful for the environment.
She says projects like silica sand mining, which Camp Morningstar is fighting against in their traditional territory near Hollowwater First Nation, still affect the environment even if the product will be used for things like solar glass panels instead of fracking for fossil fuels. Raven believes that's why Indigenous people whose land the projects will operate on should be informed and included in the development process. People who have an intrinsic responsibility and connection to the lands affected.
because these decisions, they don't only impact us today, but they're going to impact, people for years to come. I think that was what was so striking for me in Geneva, was hearing, from a lot of the different peoples, how today their women and their reproductive systems are being impacted from projects in the past.
At the summit, the Indigenous representatives created a document outlining 11 principles that corporations and governments must adhere to when creating these projects to respect the rights of and protect the well-being of Indigenous people. They include transparency, ending the criminalization of Indigenous environmental defenders, and recognizing the role Indigenous peoples play as guardians of their lands. Raven says the summit was eye-opening and that she's grateful to have attended.
I think bringing everybody together to share that and to create that understanding and that relationship, I think that only, makes us stronger as Indigenous people and as a voice.
Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
We now want to tell you about the results of last week's web poll questions. We had asked, do you support the creation of urban reserves in Canadian cities? The majority said yes, with 49%, just 28% said no, and 23% weren't sure. Next we asked, do you think government apologies for past harms against Indigenous peoples have an impact? 43% had voted no, and 36% had said yes, and the rest weren't sure at 21%. And lastly, we asked, do you think it's important for Canada's Governor-General to be fluent in both English and French? 44% of you voted no, 24% had said yes, and 18% said it was somewhat important, and 4% weren't sure. Thank you all for who voted. You can check out aptnnews.ca for our new 3 web poll questions for this week. Physicist Percy Paul from Pachinak, Saskatchewan is continuing his studies to obtain a doctorate. That interview when we come back in less than 3 minutes. Stay with us. Starting on the east, Halifax 6, Charlottetown 6. Cartwright -1, Anujiwak 3. Quebec City 3, Montreal 6. Ottawa 4, Peterborough 10. 6 in Sudbury, Wawa 9. 4 in God's Lake, 0 in Thompson. 6 in Gimli, Princess Harbour 4 in Sunny. -2 in Regina, -4 in Saskatoon. 0 in La Ronge, Meadow Lake +1. Fort Chipewyan -1, High Level -4. Red Deer 8, Lethbridge 10. Vancouver 9, Quesnel 6. Fort Nelson -6, Dease Lake -2. -7 in Watson Lake, Dawson -1. -2 in Yellowknife, Wrigley -5. Colville Lake -5, Inuvik -8. Arviat -11, Whale Cove -14. And Iqaluit -4, and Nagulik -6. According to Stats Canada, the amount of Indigenous people who hold a PhD or doctorate in North America is only 0.2%, and getting there can be very difficult for most. Percy Paul is a physicist from Pachinak in northern Saskatchewan. While pursuing his education, he has overcome childhood trauma, poverty, and mental illness to obtain his Master of Physics from the University of Saskatchewan. His eyes are now set on obtaining his doctorate from the University of Waterloo in Ontario. He hopes his story can inspire more Indigenous youth to be interested in science and physics. Here's that interview. Percy Paul, thank you so much for chatting with us today. Can you explain why you became so interested in learning about physics?
Okay, I started physics thinking about it. I guess I didn't know what physics back when I was living in Pachinak. And I was looking at Northern Lights, and I just wanted to know what they were. And so I looked in the books and figured it out eventually, I think. So that's how I started with the science. I
read that you grew up kind of learning in the libraries, learning in the books and going to the libraries, and a librarian used to help you and help you learn more about that.
Yeah, and even when I was in Pachinak, the teacher would send me to the library to learn more. And even when I was in residential school, the librarian would buy books that got me interested in more the sciences and stuff like that. So that was fun.
Yeah, you gotta love our librarians. They got a big heart.
Yeah.
Is there a specific part of physics you like to learn about and want to find out more?
Right now, I'm learning about quantum field theory, which is basically the whole of physics, and I want to apply it to gravity. So hopefully, something called quantum gravity is the big thing that people are always looking for. Hopefully, that I can have a little part of that.
How do you learn about something like that and learn more? I understand you read a lot of books.
Yeah, and there's a few websites on the internet where they provide papers, recent papers that are just published before publication, and you can read those, and there's a lot of those, so
nice.
That's a good place to go. Yeah.
And Percy, we all make some tough decisions to pursue our education and careers. Can you talk about some of the challenges you faced to get up and move to Ontario for your doctorate?
Yeah, the hard part was affording it. And then the university kicked in and helped me out with it, and so it's pretty good. And that was the hard part. And of course, I have the mood disorder problem, which is not fun at times, but I managed to suffer through it, I guess.
Yeah. Do you miss your family and everyone back at home in Saskatoon?
Yeah, my sisters are there, and people from Pachinak. I talk to them on the social media all the time, so that's pretty good for that.
It's a good way to stay in touch. Finally, Percy, what is your message to the youth who may be thinking of pursuing a career in physics and think this kind of stuff is way over my head?
I don't know. I think if you're interested in how the world works, then everybody's a physicist, so it's kind of interesting that way. And if you really want to pursue it and have a passion for it, then you should just go for it and study as much as you can and learn from the internet, I guess, and figure it out that way.
No, those are great messages.
Yeah.
Percy Paul, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time, and we wish you all the best on obtaining your PhD.
Okay, thank you very much for having me.
And that's your midday newscast for this Monday on November 4th. We'll be back again in a few hours for your evening newscast with more stories. Make sure to join us then. From everyone at APTN National News, hi miigwech, masicho. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again. Ekse.